Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the After the Frame podcast, episode 2. Today we are reviewing Superman that flew into theaters this week, James Gunn's Superman. My name is Malik, and I am again joined by.
Hi, my name is Matt.
And yeah, we are going to be breaking down scene by scene the new Superman movie. Matt, both of us were more excited for this one. Did this one, do you think, live up to your hype or not so much? What were your thoughts? How you came out of the movie?
To me, it lived up to the hype, if not exceeded it slightly, because I genuinely wasn't too sure what to expect going in. This being the first film in the essentially reboot of the DC universe, we were kind of at a point where it's like, what are we kind of getting? What are we gearing towards in the future? So this one being what it was, like I honestly don't even know where to start. This movie was just awesome. It really feels like everything just explodes off the screen. The energy, the colors, the action, it just feels big in the way that a Superman movie should. Right away, you can tell that this is meant to kick off the new DC universe with some real confidence and fun, and I was really here for it. The cast, absolutely nailed it. Like, everyone crushed their roles. David Corenswet, I didn't know too much about going in, but he is such a good Superman. He just gets it. Rachel Brosnahan from The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. I haven't watched that show, but I had heard good things. Every single character really felt alive and full of personality. And on top of that, the visuals are so good. The score absolutely rips, and the whole vibe somehow manages to be, both really funny and genuinely touching. That said, it's not perfect. I gotta admit, the beginning is kind of clunky. You can tell they were trying hard to avoid another full-blown origin story, while still introducing a ton of characters and setting up the world. And because of that, the first act feels a little all over the place. But honestly, once it gets going, you stop caring about all that and just enjoy the ride. What I really loved is how unapologetically comic booky it is. Like, it doesn't shy away from the silliness or the spectacle. It just leans into it and has fun with it. And that's exactly what I want from a Superman movie. There were so many moments in the movie where I just caught myself smiling at the screen because it was such a good time. I walked out of the theater with a big dumb grin, and honestly, that's the highest compliment I can give it. And just a couple random notes that stuck with me. First, Jimmy Olsen. The last time we saw him in the old movies, he was literally executed at point blank. Yep. And now he's here dodging his clingy ex who keeps trying to take selfies with him.
Yeah, a bit of a ladies' man in this movie.
But I think that perfectly sums up the shift from the DCEU to this new DCU. And second, Mr. Terrific is awesome. One would say he's He stole the words out of my mouth. He absolutely stole the scenes he was in. We need more of him.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you put all of this kind of perfectly. I was a little bit different. I don't know, like how you said it leans into the silliness. Like, make no mistake about it, this is a very silly movie. It has elements to it, as you said, that are very unapologetically a comic book movie. And I guess in my mind, I am so used to, over the last decade, superhero movies, be it both, DC, Marvel, even TV shows like The Boys, everything is trying to be grounded more in reality. So I guess like seeing this movie, I was a little bit underwhelmed just because in my head, I hyped up this movie so much. And yes, I believe it does live up to the hype that it advertises. However, for me, I was underwhelmed leaving that first time. I've since seen it a second time and I enjoyed it more the second time. And I think going into it, just kind of letting go of all of your whatever preconceived notions you have about comic book films, Superman, anything else, and just anybody who's enjoyed a comic knows that this was basically just like a comic book come to life. Once you embrace just James Gunn's quirky and kooky way of doing things, you kind of, as you said, you just like fall into it. I definitely felt leaving the theater myself. It reminded me of the animated series, the Superman animated series, Batman animated series, the Justice League stuff that I watched as a kid. And you feel that type of thing. The casting that you touched on, James Gunn has really been outstanding in every movie he's produced or directed. That the casting has been perfect based on the look of the character as well as the characters acting like the characters, be it Guardians of the Galaxy, even Scooby-Doo. Great castings. I really did enjoy the movie. I had mixed feelings in the beginning when I first watched it, just because I love these characters so much, and I was just kind of, debating, do I really like this goofiness? Do I really not? But I've come around to it now after a day or two of thinking and really, mulling it over. Getting into the first scene, we start with a title crawl. People were comparing it to the Star Wars title crawls. I don't think it was quite like that. It wasn't nearly as like a paragraph rolling across, like setting up the whole thing. It sets up some plot things just for the universe, so people that aren't so familiar with things can have some context of what's going on within the story, within the universe at this point in time. So we have a title crawl that says 300 years metahumans first appeared, and this age is now called Gods and Monsters, which is the chapter 1 of James Gunn's DCU. Then we go 30 years is when Superman arrives. He crashes from Krypton into Kansas and is adopted by Kansas farmers. Then 3 years ago, Superman is now grown up, and he announces himself to the world as Superman and starts, fighting crime and doing all that in Metropolis. 3 weeks ago, Superman intervenes in a war and stops Bravia from invading Jaranpur, and it's very controversial amongst, people on the internet, the government. Then it says 3 hours ago, the Hammer of Baravia, who is a metahuman, kind of in like a Hulkbuster looking suit, attacks Metropolis because of him intervening in the war. And then it says 3 minutes ago, Superman loses a battle for the first time. So this movie is very different than Henry Cavill's Superman. I want to get that out the way. This Superman gets his ass beat a lot. He's not a god. The first thing we see of him is him, the scene from the trailer crashing into the ice, bloodied, everything like that. So I thought that was a pretty cool point. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, going back to the very beginning, I like having us kick off with the basics. It tells us that Krypton blows up. Jor-El and Lara send baby Kal-El to Earth. He's raised by the Kents. The whole drill. But the movie not spending forever on it was something I really liked. By the time we're actually in the story, Clark has already been Superman for like 3 years. He's saving people, working at the Daily Planet, dating Lois, and she already knows he's Superman, which is kind of refreshing. Right from the start, it just felt big and colorful and exciting. The whole thing just pops off the screen in the best way. And then the following scene, we get this awesome first big fight. A few weeks before the movie starts, Superman stopped Baravia from invading Jarhanpur.
This scene, he's crashed down, he's bleeding, he's breathing very heavily. He whistles out for Krypto. Krypto comes running over, is like jumping on him and like hurting him, and takes him off to the fortress, drags him through the ice, and the fortress pops up. I thought the fortress looked incredible. I kind of am excited for how James Gunn is doing in this universe, where he wraps filming and then gives the VFX artists a good year to be able to fix everything, do whatever they got to do so the movie looks as good as it did. Did you feel the same with the fortress?
Yeah, I thought it looked incredible. And, on that note of VFX, hey, Marvel, give people time, please. Because otherwise, we've seen what they've output, but that's a whole nother topic. Yeah, going back to, Baravia sending this massive armored guy, the Hammer of Baravia, to Metropolis to get this revenge, the kicker being that Superman actually losing badly, retreating to the fortress to recover. I thought the fortress was really, really well done. And Krypto, his super dog, was really well done. He shows up thinking Superman's just clowning around, playing dead. And so Krypto's hopping up on top of him, just beating him up. And then Krypto's like, it's like something's wrong. And then Krypto helping him out, which I thought was hilarious and adorable at the same time. I thought this whole part was just so well done.
Yeah, it shows the unique relationship, we'll say, between Superman and Krypto. We come to find out that it's not his dog, it's more of a foster situation, but we'll not jump the gun on that one yet. Yeah, I thought that out of all of the CGI elements, because, it's a big superhero movie, it has a lot of CGI stuff in it, I thought Krypto looked the best somehow. Like, Krypto looked like an actual dog, behaved like an actual dog. Like, I believe they said they had a dog on set to stand in, so I don't know if they mocapped the dog or what happened, but Krypto, I think, VFX wise, just alone should like win an award like on what they did. I think he looked really good.
So from the bit that I read, I think so the dog itself was actually modeled after James Gunn's dog, Ozu. I believe he looks exactly like Krypto, just not white. But I think when they were doing the motion capture, I think they had a stand-in dog. But when it comes to the modeling, I think they took Gunn's dog and essentially just turned him white and added a cape.
Okay. Well, yeah, that makes sense. So yeah, Krypto drags him over. The score starts playing. We see the crystals start forming out of the ground. The superbots see that he's injured. They come over and help him out. The main superbot, which is Four, voiced by Alan Tudyk, he goes over and picks him up, and while they're taking Superman over to his chair for him to bathe in the yellow sun, he explains that he already has the message that Superman's birth parents sent to him on the ship when he crash landed 30 years ago. And he likes to play it because it just soothes him so much. You get that Clark is literally mouthing the words to it. So it shows that he listens to it basically on a daily basis, it sounds like. And we find out that this message is kind of like why he's so driven to be a superhero, to do the good that he's doing. It says, "We love you more than heaven, our son. We love you more than land. Our beloved home will soon be gone forever, but hope vitalizes our hearts. That hope is you, Kal-El. We have searched the universe for a home where you can do the most good and live out Krypton's truth. That place is Earth." And then the video starts kind of glitching a little bit, and then the robot explains the rest of it got damaged on the trip, so he only listens to that part on loop. So then, yeah, he gets the sun beamed onto him. He starts yelling. You can see it hurts a bit. Then we cut to the engineer. She is walking through the snow, and we hear Lex over her comms, and she is trying to find the Fortress of Solitude. Back to the fortress where Superman is 83% charged, which is what the robot tells us, but wants to rush off. He's like, I don't have time to do 100%. I need to go back and stop the Hammer of Baravia, as you mentioned. And then, yeah, he flies off. The engineer tracks from where he flies off to and tells Lex he's heading back to Metropolis, and that's the end of that scene. We get a very cool flying sequence that I really like, where the camera zooms in on the S as he's flying back to Metropolis, and then we cut to the title card. So we cut to Metropolis, where the Hammer of Baravia is basically attacking the town. He makes a point of mentioning that the only reason he's here is because Superman intervened in Baravia's conflicts and stopped their war. So they're very much trying to paint Superman as a bad guy. From there, we cut to Luthor Corp. Through the sunshine, we get the president of the Hate Fan Club, Lex Luthor, played by, and I think probably my favorite role in the movie, played by Nicholas Hoult. Did you enjoy Lex in this movie, especially from the last Lex that we had that a lot of people don't seem to like?
Don't get me started on that, Lex. No, Nicholas Hoult as Lex, I thoroughly enjoyed. I thought he was incredible in the role.
We see that Lex is actually the person that is communicating with the Hammer of Baravia. I have not read All-Star Superman yet. This movie was based on that book. But Lex has these call-out codes that are almost like chess, a little bit of like video game or like chess call-outs where it's like, oh, knight to B4. He's been tracking Superman and so obsessed with him that he knows his fighting pattern and kind of has these codes that he tells his workers to put in to be able to fight Superman. And I don't think I've ever seen Lex do that before. I'm not sure if that was a comic book thing or that was unique to this, but I thought that was cool.
Yeah, I think it was unique to this. I've read All-Star Superman, and there are elements pulled in from there into this, but that was not one of them. Having that kind of sense of control from Lex to Hammer Bravia was actually really well done, in my opinion. And the action in that scene was awesome. The music we got in it absolutely ripped. And
Superman does not get a punch in. He's trying to fight, and Hammer Bravia is just beating him up, ends up just chucking him down to the ground. He crash lands in front of like a bunch of people in Metropolis, and he makes kind of a little bit of a crater in the floor. We see the local from Metropolis. They say his name is Molly. He sees Superman fall down, and he runs over to try and help him up. And he's like, oh, you save us so much. Now it's my turn to return the favor. We cut back to the engineer. She ends up finding the fortress, but it starts to go back into the ground. Lex is like, keep the location in mind and then just report back. We've got what we need. From that point, the Hammer just flies off while the citizens are all there around Superman. And then one of the citizens just mentions, hey, Superman, maybe you should have just like left that whole conflict alone.
With that bit, I think this segment of scenes had some real emotion with, Lois and the public questioning whether he should have even gotten involved in the war, and then jumping forward a little bit, Lois and Clark have this really tense argument that feels super real. But on the Lex side of things, Lex Luthor is doing his thing in the background, and he sends this nanotech assassin called the Engineer to spy on Superman, and we find out he's also secretly controlling the Hammer, which we later find out is Ultraman, another one of his soldiers. He's controlling the Hammer Ultraman from behind the scenes.
That leads us perfectly into the next scene. Luthor Corp has a beach set up kind of right outside of Metropolis. A hammer flies over there. He goes into a tent and there's a portal there. He goes through and into the portal is like this dark dimension where we find out it's a pocket universe, and we find out that Lex has created to go through the pocket universe to go to another portal to be at the Luthor Corp headquarters. And as you said, he takes off the mask and reveals that it is Ultraman. In the next scene here, we cut to the Pentagon, and Lex is talking to the Secretary of Defense. He pitches his team a Planet Watch, which includes Ultraman, which we already met, as you said. He doesn't say where Ultraman is from. He just says that he created Ultraman and that he is the most powerful being on the planet. It includes the engineer, who we've already met, as you said, is nanotechnology. She's a former operative that Lex infused with nanotechnology in her blood, so now she can basically use nanotech to turn into whatever she wants. And then the other parts of his team are called the Raptors. They kind of are these flying armored police. The Raptors, I've just written here, are disposable people for Superman to be able to fight off easily.
That's accurate. Henchmen.
Yeah, basically, yeah, just like goons or henchmen. Within the room, we get the cameo from Rick Flag Sr., who in this universe is the father of Rick Flag from the Suicide Squad movies. He is going
Rest in peace.
Yeah, rest in peace. He is now being seen in the second DCU property. He was in Creature Commandos, kind of leading that team, and he will be in Peacemaker Season 2 next month. So, yeah, they debate on whether or not to let Lex Luthor use his team to take down Superman. Another secretary or just a worker within the Pentagon in this meeting accuses Lex of wanting this war because he sells supplies and weapons to Baravia. So obviously him inciting a war between Baravia and Jaranpur would be more profitable to Luthor Corp. And then he pivots saying, oh, it has nothing to do with that. I'm just scared of basically this alien coming to Earth. We don't know anything about him. They mention kryptonite. They say, oh, kryptonite could be able to contain him. They make the point of saying there's no more left on the planet, which I thought was interesting, which is why Lex Luthor has to find his unique way of getting kryptonite. They decide that it's really not worth the risk of Lex right now doing anything towards trying to stop Superman or take him in. The scene ends with the secretary closing a case, and the next scene just transitions into Lois opening her front door, and I thought it was a really cool scene.
Yeah, no, that was a really neat transition.
Lois comes home from, you can assume, work. It's nighttime now, and she hears like rustling in her kitchen, and she grabs a bat because she doesn't know like who it is, and then it's Clark Kent. They talk about them being in a relationship for 3 months now. He says that he's there cooking them dinner for the anniversary of their first date 3 months ago. And I didn't write down every quote from the scene because then this podcast would go on for 3 hours. The Spark Notes version of the scene is basically her asking Superman, so what happened in Baravia? He says, well, Baravia was trying to go into Jaranpur and start a war, take their people, and I showed up there and told them that that's not right. And then Lois is basically throughout this whole interview playing devil's advocate. Superman is getting more and more upset. And the bottom line is that he's not thinking about ramifications of anything. He just looks at everything as good and bad, black and white. So he just went to a country trying to do good, wasn't really thinking about any war or how the US or anything would see it. And, you know, you could say was doing the right thing, but Lois is trying to say, well, that's not how the world works. Ramifications are going to happen, which is why he's getting all this backlash that he doesn't understand.
Yeah, I mean, it was really tense, and I mean, but it felt super authentic.
Right.
Did you pick up on when they first started? Did you pick up on what Clark called Lois?
Yeah,
as they started
Cronkite. Yeah, Walter Cronkite. Yeah.
So yeah, a little bit of background on him. I mean, he was a journalist in the 60s and 70s, so I thought that was a nice little Easter egg.
Nice.
But yeah, you know, I thought it was a really good interaction between the two, just kind of seeing, you know, the separation of personal and work.
Yeah, after all of what they were talking about with the politics, Clark gets really upset and Lois sees that. So she says, let's change the subject. They switch the subject to online hate. She says that people are concerned about him being an alien. Clark explains that the whole backstory, like you said, Krypton was destroyed. It destroyed all of his history. He goes on in the interview to say that he has this message from his parents and that he wants to serve humanity and he wants to basically just do good. Like that's what he believes his parents sent him to do or sent him here to do. And it's why he does what he does.
So I thought it was funny how You know, he works for the Daily Planet. He's a reporter. He's used to conducting these interviews with himself. But then as he's being recorded, they keep transitioning from on the record to off the record. And he's like, oh, you can't use that. But that's on the record. No, you can't use it. Like, too bad.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's just
that
like,
was a fun little back and forth.
yeah.
So then she transitions into specific hashtags of things that are going on with Superman. They say hashtag super spy and hashtag super shit. When he hears super shit, he blows up. He gets very pissed off about this and he's ready to leave. Then she takes the dishes into the kitchen and she says, "This is why I said this would never work." And then he confronts her saying, "Well, what are you talking about?" And she says, "Oh, no, nothing. I'm just not good at relationships." And then he says, "Okay." And he leaves, and that's how they leave it. Well, I like this scene a lot because it showed a good amount of Lois and Clark, some that we did not get within the films, the more recent films of Superman. I feel like this shows like that it's not all sunshine and roses for their relationship. I kind of like, because, all couples fight. It's not always going to be everything is agreed with. Now we cut to Lex Luthor and the rest of his crew. They arrive in Antarctica now, and they're trying to get into the fortress. Lex, this whole scene is just like the coolest guy, man. He's just like not worried about anything. So we find out that, yeah, he's able to just go into the fortress, and it's a mystery that gets explained later. Ultraman just flies in and starts destroying all the robots and starts breaking them up. Same thing with the Engineer. She turns her hands into these pretty cool like buzz saws. Again, hats off to the VFX artist. Lex Luthor, while all this is going on, is just aura farming his way over to the panel. Krypto, he comes flying in, hits the Engineer in her face, and is gonna try and attack and help. But the Engineer just like takes her nano technology and just engulfs his face, so he can't do anything. Get Lex going over to the panel, and we hear him explain a little bit. He does not like all metahumans. He hates Superman more than all of them. He says that Superman isn't a man. He's an it, and he doesn't really like that Superman being an alien is getting all this attention. He says that he's become the focal point of the world's conversation. So then he basically says they want to find anything incriminating that they can use on Superman that he can bring to the government. So he has the Engineer hack into the panel, and the Engineer says, "Well, the message is damaged, but I can like crack it." And then she eventually starts to hear the ending part, the part that we don't hear and Superman hasn't heard. The Engineer's worried, "Oh, what if Superman comes back? How are we going to stop him?" And Lex just says, "Oh, don't worry, I've got a distraction cooking." And then, yeah, we cut to Metropolis, and then Lex's goons basically release a very tiny monster at the time, just releases it out into the wild. And then they just note it's going to get bigger. So that'll be the distraction for Superman. And then that's the end of that scene there.
Yeah, I think this is a good, wrap up and good segue into the next scene, because Lex at this point is really just all behind the scenes. And then, then he actually starts getting in front of things. He crashes the fortress, and then, we see his goons let out this little monster.
Mhm.
And it's like, okay, like this little thing's running around. And then, we cut to, I'd assume like the following morning or something. And we come to find that they've unleashed this giant fire-breathing kaiju on Metropolis. And Lex at this point is just completely screwing with Superman's life. It's just like, let me see how many problems I can cook up.
Yeah, as you said, that small monster has now we see grown to be, a kaiju size. And it cuts to it's about to step on a dog, and Superman like flies in to make sure the dog's okay. He like uses his super breath to like blow the dog out of the way, and then he starts fighting this kaiju. He really makes a point that while he's fighting the kaiju in the middle of Metropolis, he's making sure to save as many people as he can whilst trying to stop it. The kaiju like blows some fire towards a building. Superman blocks it, checks on the people, make sure they're okay. I've written in my notes in that part, "This is my Superman. I like this kind of Superman that's like, I want to make sure everybody's okay." The kaiju's running wild, about to step on a woman. He like swoops in and takes her up to the top of the building, telling her, "Oh, just breathe, it'll be okay." And then we get like some of the best characters in the movie appear. The Justice Gang, Green Lantern, Guy Gardner, Hawk Girl, and Mr. Terrific. They join in here, and then it shows that they kind of have a relationship with Superman. They know him, and they've obviously fought together before.
Yeah, the Justice Gang shows up. One thing that I kind of thought, and I thought it was funny because I saw the image, I saw the scene, and it just made me have flashbacks. So, Superman's flying around. He saves the dog. He saves a woman who he like flies to a roof and drops her off. And then we see Superman fighting the kaiju before the Justice Gang shows up. But we see him like fly up into the sky. And then I think he he basically straight up knees the kaiju like in the
He
head.
cannonballs, yeah.
So what it made me think of, going back to, using another superhero as a reference, the Teen Titans like cartoon show, where and like it consistently gets memed to this day, where Robin is like given this like knee drop. He's fighting some guy, and I don't know if you've seen the meme, but it's so funny. Robin is just like, he jumps off of a building, and this thug is on the ground, and Robin just flies in with his knees, and he just flies into the dude's chest, and it's just, that's what my mind went to. The picture is so funny.
Yeah, you'll have to. I haven't
But
seen that. Yeah, you'll have to.
Superman is flying around doing what he can to make sure everybody's okay. He saves a little girl after they, are making a mess of things, and these like tubes go flying, and Superman shields her.
My
And
favorite
then
scene
there's
in the movie. That's like a
yeah,
great shot.
that slow motion trim down was a good save. And then, I mean, Superman is all about saving good. He saves a little squirrel before it gets crushed and saves that. But the Justice Gang are just being a little reckless. Superman has a nice conversation with Mr. Terrific while Guy Gardner and Hawkgirl are just beating this thing, and Superman's like, why don't we try and do what we can to, save it, or at least, take it out in as little of pain as possible. And Mr. Terrific's like, nah. He's like, I'm not doing all that. And then so they just destroy the kaiju while making fun of Superman for holding back. Mr. Terrific lets out these little bombs. His T-spheres, as Guy Gardner and Hawkgirl are just beating its eyes mercilessly. And then the T-spheres fly into the robot, and then you get a cool scene where Superman uses his X-ray vision. I think this was the only like real instance where they show off his X-ray vision.
It was.
And you see the T-spheres flowing down, and they just blow up inside of the kaiju. And I will admit, this section is where the movie does get a little messy. There's a lot going on, and it feels kind of rushed. But I mean, the film as a whole is still such a blast that I didn't even care that much.
Like, I thought it was funny, the thing you mentioned, he's talking to Mr. Terrific, and Mr. Terrific does this thing in this movie where somebody says something to him, and he just like turns to them like, is this guy like serious? Like, is he like, this guy's like an idiot? So he kind of looks at Superman like he's an idiot. A Green Lantern who has a lot of funny parts in this movie. He like goes up to Superman. He's like celebrating. He's like the kind of guy, if you know Guy Gardner from the comics, he's like kind of the jockey type Green Lantern. So he's like going up to Superman. He's like, oh, we're going to have like kaiju steaks. He's like, oh, we did such a good job. And Superman's like, come on, man. Like, I thought we could have found a way for you to help me to take him outer space or done something better. We didn't have to kill him. Then the crowd like forms around them. We find out that they're a sponsored team by Maxwell Lord and Lord Tech. Guy Gardner has like this whole spiel like Justice Gang sponsored by Lord Tech or something like that. Another cool thing to note in this is that the kids run specifically to Superman, which I thought was a really cool touch. The kids run over and are hugging him, and he's like talking to them and high-fiving them, everything. Whereas like Guy Gardner just is like wanting the praise from like everybody else, like taking pictures and whatnot. But yeah, then we transition into a scene where they're in the middle of celebrating, and then like on a big jumbotron, I guess on one of the sides of the buildings, Lex breaks the news of what he found in the Fortress of Solitude, which is the second half of the message that Superman's parents left for him in the crash. So Lex says that, yeah, I've sent this to a bunch of linguists. We've had a bunch of people decode this, and this is what it says. Then they play the clip of the parents, and it says the first part. Superman's like, well, what's the problem with that? Then it cuts to the second part, which he's never heard before in his life. And I have the quote here. The people, they are simple, the people of Earth, they are simple and profoundly confused, weak of mind, spirit, and body. Lord over the planet as the last son of Krypton. Dispatch of anyone unable or unwilling to serve you, Kal-El. Take as many wives as you can, sow your genes, and Krypton's might and legacy will live on in the new frontier. Do us proud, our beloved son. Rule without mercy.
I can respect them going for the risk. It reminded me a lot of in the Batman, where we find out the Waynes are not who we thought they were. I didn't mind the twist.
Okay.
But that's my opinion.
Yeah, I also didn't mind it. Like, I can imagine, like, if you have a whole mantra your whole life, and now it's like his whole world comes crashing down. Lex is on the big screen saying, oh, he's scared. David Cornsweet plays this really well. So yeah, they walk into Stag Industries, and he's trying to figure out what all this means. The Justice Gang come in. I like this part. Green Lantern just uses his ring to put a force field around because everybody's trying to take pictures. He like blocks off all the windows so nobody can see them. I thought that was pretty cool. And then, yeah, they confront Superman. Superman's trying to deny it. He's in denial. He's like, no, I've only heard the first part. I've never heard that second part, but it has to be doctored. But we find out Mr. Terrific knows a lot of the people that Lex Luthor mentioned were the linguists, and he says that those analysts would not lie about something like that. So Mr. Terrific confirms basically that it was, in fact, the actual translation. That's what his parents said. At this point in the movie, I'll tell you how I felt, but I want to get your thoughts. Did you feel that it was ramping up to be Lex Luthor had doctored it to make it seem as though Superman was here to destroy everybody, or did you immediately just believe, oh no, like they said that?
Yeah, so my thing with the to touch on the linguist's validity, like it's an alien language. So like unless you've interacted with a Kryptonian, you otherwise probably wouldn't know what they're saying. I was under the impression that it was tampered with. Like Angela the engineer pulled what she could, and they could probably pull the Kryptonian part, but as the English translation, like nobody really knows. I was under the impression it was doctored, but
Right.
then we later find out that it's authentic.
Yeah, yeah. I was in that same camp. Hawk Girl kind of brings up how did they get the footage, and then Superman's like, "Oh shit." The only way he could have done that is like to go to the fortress. So he immediately zips off to fly to the fortress and see what's going on. I remember you had made a comment about this when we watched the movie. Lois is on the phone with the Secretary of Defense, and you're like, how does she just have the Secretary of Defense's number? Yeah, so she calls him up and is like, what are you guys going to do about Superman? Are you going to bring him in for questioning? And he basically brushed it off. And they said that, like, I think we need to get Lex Luthor's Planet Watch involved because now with this, in light of this news, we don't know what Superman might actually be planning. Cuts to a scene on the TV again. We have the Baravian president doing another press conference there. And he basically is saying the same, reiterating the same stuff. So the press conference concludes, and then we see the president, like, talking to his constituents, going to his office. And then we get revealed he clicks a little remote button and he opens up a painting in his office, and there's a Lex portal there, and he walks through the portal, and Lex and Ultraman are just there in the pocket universe waiting for him. So we find out that Lex has not just been pulling the strings in one direction, but he's also in cahoots with the president of Baravia. And in this scene, they're chatting a little bit, and then we also find out that he wants to take over Jaranpur, and then the president is going to give him half of Jaranpur, and they're going to split it in half, and Lex is going to have his own country. So yeah, any other thoughts on that scene where the reveal of the parents and how everybody reacts?
No, not really. I mean, I thought it was well done. Just having the tonal shift, because from this point on, it's really where it gets a little darker,
Mm-hmm.
and we start to delve into the meat and potatoes of the movie, essentially.
We cut back to Superman. He flies over to the fortress, and he sees it all completely ransacked. All the robots are still like strewn around and everything. He talks to Four, and Four kind of, like, I put in quotes, like dies, kind of like shuts down a little bit. He calls to Krypto. He like whistles for Krypto, and then he starts getting worried. So he gets pissed again. He flies from there, flies straight to Luthor Corp. And Luthor's like in a meeting. He flies in straight through the door. Superman's like asking, "Where's the dog?" Like, he's just a dog, Lex. I need to know where he is. And then, Lex is just being petty and like whispering stuff into while he's drinking the mug, like being, oh, like stupid, ugly dog in a cape or something, getting Superman more riled up. And yeah, while he's doing that, he's telling his girlfriend Eve, like, oh, get it all on video. And yeah, so that video gets out, and then it's just adding more fuel to the fire. We're back in Lois's apartment, and Superman is there in suit, like watching the news. And then he refers over, he says, what are your thoughts on this, Chris? And then we see Peacemaker there giving his opinion in full getup. John Cena appears. So I thought that was a cool cameo.
I mean, it's just typical Lex Luthor, stirring the pot, and he's like, "Hey," he's like,
Mhm.
I'm not doing this," even though he is.
Lois turns off the TV for him. Lois is just there talking to him. He's kind of like very down on himself, obviously. There's like a big fight scene going on in the background of this scene, which I thought was very funny. It's like the Justice Gang fighting this giant orb or something, and he says it's a dimensional imp. Like, it gives the impression that in Metropolis this happens every other Tuesday. But yeah, they have like a good little heart to heart. I like this scene a lot. He basically tells Lois that obviously he's not there to lord over anybody, and that he only wants to do good, and he thought that that's what his parents wanted, so now he's a bit conflicted. Lois talks about how they're both very different, which is why they ended up fighting. Lois knows he's a good man, but she's the type of person where she says she questions everything and everyone, and she says Clark is very trusting and sees the good in people. They talk a little bit about all of that stuff, and Superman just decides, you know what, the Department of Justice wants me. They have a warrant out for my arrest. I'm just going to turn myself in. And he's like, I think that that's the only way for me to find out where they're keeping Krypto. They hug, and he decides he's going to go off and turn himself in. And he says, I love you, Lois, for the first time. And she does not say it back yet.
One thing that I did appreciate is within this scene, we see the background fight of the dimensional imp and everything, and then there's the heart to heart with Lois and Clark. I'm not sure if you recall, but the when this movie was first like being marketed and announced and everything, our first ever shot of Superman was actually this specific scene. We see the dimensional imp in the background and Superman sitting down, his costume's beaten up, and he's like adjusting his boots. And there was plenty of speculation going back to who was this, what was going on. This was about probably like a year or so ago, first material whatsoever, and it kind of left the fans like unsure as far as what the movie had in store. And I think it was a good kind of fake out because this background everybody kind of assumed was something big, and it's really not. And I thought that was a good job by Gunn when first marketing the movie to kind of subvert expectations in a way.
Yeah, I remember people talking about that. I find that funny too. People were all on the internet saying this must be like the final battle. So yeah, I agree. It was a good subversion for sure.
Yeah, but then from there, we get a good segue, and it continues its darker theme. Superman decides, hey, I'm gonna go turn myself in, and the next cutaway is Superman's getting his face slammed in by Ultraman as he's getting arrested. Superman's wondering, like, hey, what are you doing all this for? Like, is this necessary? He's like, I'm on my own accord. And we see the engineer, we see Ultraman, we see the Raptors and everything, but we also see Rick Flag. And Superman makes a good joke. He's like, hey, where are my rights? And Rick Flag's like, you're an alien. No rights for you. But from there, he gets captured, and then Rick Flag is like, hey, we made the call to turn you over to Luthor Corps. And then I can just imagine in the Superman's head, he's like, why would you do that? Like, come on, man. And then from there, he gets taken to the beach where Luthor Corps is operating out of. And then from there, he gets thrown into, he gets taken to this insane pocket dimension prison where we find this other character named Metamorpho. And I thought his inclusion was really cool. He's already there. And so Superman walks into this box, and there's Metamorpho, and then in front of him is like this alien creature thing. And then once he walks in, the box behind him closes, and we see Luthor off to the side. He's like, hey, long time no see. But Metamorpho being there, we later find that he's being blackmailed because Luthor has his baby. And then Luthor is trying to get answers out of Superman. But in the meantime, Luthor is forcing Metamorpho to make kryptonite to weaken Superman.
Lex goes on to explain kind of how he did the whole pocket dimension thing. He says that he replicated the Big Bang using a LexCorp collider, and it tore a hole between the two universes, and then he accesses it through portals he has set up all around the world, which explains a lot of the time where Lex Luthor is in many places very quickly. He'll be in Antarctica, then in Luthor Corp, then he's in an interview. So he has already set up a bunch of portals throughout the world to be able to just navigate through. But yeah, we get to see Metamorpho a little bit. So Lex like tells Superman, hey, Metamorpho, he calls him Element Man. He's able to basically turn his body into any element. And Lex Luthor says, be that on Earth or something that's not of this planet. And then he has him turn his hand into the kryptonite hand. We cut back to the planet. This is where Jimmy and Lois are talking about all of what has happened with Superman now. And they're trying to figure out how Lex Luthor at this point ties into it. Then this is where we kind of get a little bit more of the comedy with Jimmy Olsen. They're trying to figure out where they're keeping Superman, but she says that the government is not telling anyone. He texts his source called Mutant Toes and asks basically where are they keeping Superman, and immediately the source messages back saying, oh, he's in a pocket dimension or a pocket universe prison. And he tells Lois this, and then she runs off to go and, figure out what's next. The source is obviously flirting with him and says, you want to meet up or something? You see, it's like a drag for him. He's like, oh, I guess. And it's even funnier like when they do the reveal. So he's going to go and meet his source. And we get the big joke reveal that the informant is Lex's girlfriend, Eve, who is like obsessed with Jimmy, as like all girls are in this movie for whatever reason. Yeah, she kind of starts telling him a little bit more about what Lex is doing, that Lex was like torturing Krypto and stuff of that nature. And then he's like, well, I need you to find out as much as you can on Lex so we can take him down. And then she's kind of feeling used. She runs off and she agrees because, yeah, she's just so into him. We're back in the pocket universe. We got Superman, and he is trying to talk to Metamorpho at this point. Metamorpho's just sitting in the corner with his kryptonite hand, not saying anything. Superman's like on the floor, like wheezing, and he's saying, "Oh, if that's your son, if you can stop with the kryptonite, I can fly over, grab him, and we can escape." And Metamorpho's obviously scared because Lex is clearly, threatening to kill his son. So he tells Superman, "Don't talk to me." And he like goes closer to Superman, and we see it like starts boiling his skin almost, which I thought was a pretty cool effect of what kryptonite does to him. So we cut now to the Hall of Justice. And once again, like how Lois Lane somehow has the cell phone number of the Secretary of Defense, she's just in the Hall of Justice, just like talking to the Justice Gang. And I'm like, does she just get to go over?
She just waltzes right in.
Yeah, I don't know if it's just like they're trying to say she's a reporter, so she just has these people's numbers and gets to do whatever, but I digress. So yeah, in the Hall of Justice, they're talking about like what they can do about Superman, and she wants their help, and she's like, "Oh, he's your friend. We need to find him." They have like a funny back and forth, her and Green Lantern, where Green Lantern basically says that, Clark Kent wears hypno glasses. We find out that all three of them know Clark's identity. From there, we find out Mr. Terrific, anybody that he works with, he puts tracking devices in their blood, he says, and he's tracked Superman's location to that beach where near like Luthor Corp is working, and the trail ends like in a tent. So Lois is like, all right, perfect. All four of us go over there and we rescue Superman. It'll be easy. And then they kind of are like, Superman would be a fugitive from the law at that point. We don't want to get involved. And, Hawkgirl and Green Lantern are more like, it's bad for our brand. During this whole scene, Mr. Terrific's kind of like silent, like just thinking. She leaves very upset because she thought like it'd be easy to just go over there and convince them they're all friends and they're not really into it. But as she's leaving, Mr. Terrific goes out to her and says, listen, I want to go out there, give you some help. Let's figure out what's going on over there. And then he reveals he has his T-ship in a garage that's taking too long to open. And they get in the T-ship and they fly off to the beach where Lex's goons are at.
Yeah, so one thing that I picked up on the first watch, and then looking a little more in detail on the second watch, along the wall in the Hall of Justice, there is a mural, and you can see the formation of the Justice Society of America, which is like the golden age of superheroes in that era. On the first watch, I called out Wildcat. You can see Wildcat on the wall, and I was like, wait a minute. I'm like, I want to see who else. And then it cuts away immediately. So the second watch, I was like, let me see who else I can find. And yeah, it's the whole Justice Society of America there. And then another thing that I thought was funny in that scene, as Lois is trying to get them convinced to come and help, Guy Gardner is just like, on my vows, man. He's like, I gotta stick to my vows. That's like, I can't get involved in politics and things like that. And then as Lois is walking away, he's got a blonde bowl cut, essentially. Lois is like, that haircut's against your vows. And Guy Gardner is just like attacked, offended. So I thought that was funny.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like Guy Gardner in this one. I'm very much looking forward to seeing him in Lanterns. He's supposed to have a pretty big role in that. We cut back to the Pocket Universe now, and Lex wakes up Superman. Now, I believe it's the next day at this point. Lex captures the guy from the falafel stand, Molly, and he's trying to interrogate Superman. So he has like a gun, and he's like going to play Russian roulette with him. And he's asking him all these questions. He's saying, who are you working with on this planet? So he shoots the first bullet. Nothing happens. Spins the revolver again. Asks him, who raised you as a child? Superman is like pleading with Lex. Like his face is all like kind of getting deformed from the kryptonite. Lex shoots the second one, and it actually kills him. Superman like obviously starts tearing up and like crying, and same thing with Metamorpho. And Lex just says to Superman, he's like, I'll just find somebody else tomorrow and I'll kill them too. I'll just bring them here and just do the same thing. But he's like, how about the reporter that you're always doing interviews with? I'll kill Clark Kent next, which I thought was like kind of like funny that it's like, oh, Lex, for how brilliant he thinks he is, hasn't figured that part out yet. And then yeah, it just shows Superman on the floor like so distraught, he's like crying, and then yeah, you hear Metamorpho weeping behind him as well, like, and you kind of, there's like a zoom in shot of Metamorpho kind of coming to his senses, seeing just how evil Lex can be.
I think the hostage scene just kind of helped show and prove how serious Lex is, and that once the hostage is gone, we're at that point where Metamorpho finally snaps and is starting to come to his senses a little bit and talk. He's actually talking with Superman a little bit, and then eventually Metamorpho is just like, all right, no more kryptonite.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, the next scene is probably one of my favorite scenes. So it's the T-ship now is arriving with Mr. Terrific and Lois on that beach where we see Luthor Corp and all of the tents are set up and everything, where the portal is located. So Mr. Terrific kind of just gets out. He's not really paying attention to all these people telling him like, hey, you can't be here. He's like talking to Lois saying like, oh, this is like where Superman was. Like he's showing like holograms of Superman walking, which I thought were really cool, using the T-spheres. The rest of the people are kind of like underestimating him. They're like, oh, is that somebody from the Justice Gang, and they're like, oh, it's just the smart one, like making it seem like he can't fight or do anything. Then they all start trying to attack him, and I thought the scene was really cool. And Mr. Terrific just puts like them in like a bit of like a dome to protect them from the gunshots and the fire. And then he starts like kind of just like gesturing with his hands, and the T spheres are just attacking people in so many cool different ways. He jumps out of the dome and just starts attacking people. What did you think about like this fight scene?
Yeah, I agree. It reminded me a lot of, I don't remember which Guardians movie it was between 1 and 2. It reminded me a lot of James Gunn's prior work with Yondu, when Yondu had the stick, the rod, whatever you want to call it, the needle whizzing
The arrow.
around, just like the arrow, that's right, whizzing around, knocking everybody out. It reminded me a lot of that because it kind of coincided with the music that was being played. The one thing that I actually appreciated from this scene was it cut to and from Lois's perspective as well as around Lois. Like, you know, the camera's kind of going in a circle as Lois is like looking around and seeing people flying left and right. It was a really well shot scene.
One of the best fight scenes, I think, in the movie. And for the next scene, we cut back to Metamorpho, and he's like had a change of heart now after he's seen Lex like kill that man in cold blood. He stops using the kryptonite and he uses an intelligence to know like the different elements of the sun, and he creates a mini sun, you could say, or like a fusion ball, whatever you want to call it. It shines like a bright light so that it alerts the guards. The guards like look down, see what's going on. By that point, Superman's already charged up a good amount, punches straight through the glass easily, flies over, breaks the other glass, punches that guard, and just takes the baby. Then we have a Metamorpho just come over, greet his baby, and say, I can't hold him while I'm changing elements. You're just going to have to carry him while we escape. And then from there, Superman just like flies through, gets Krypto, like cracks the glass that he was in. Krypto like greets him the same way, like knocking him over and everything. And then they're trying to figure out how to get out of there. But by that time, the Raptors are on them, and like one group takes Superman somewhere, puts them into like this river, like this antimatter river, I think they called it, and it's like heading towards a black hole, and they're attacking Superman, and he's still not at full power yet, so they're able to like attack him and keep him down. Because remember, Superman's like holding this baby, trying to make sure the baby's safe. The other group with Metamorpho, he just turns himself into an acid. Like he puts elements together to make an acid and sprays them, and then they're dispatched. But yeah, I like this scene a lot. It's a lot of heavy CGI. That was my only one scene where the CGI was a little iffy, but not enough for it to, ruin the scenes or anything like that. What did you think?
I mean, from a CGI perspective, I mean, you're in this alternate universe essentially, so you're automatically going to look a little different from a scene environment perspective. But I didn't think it was too over the top.
Krypto and Superman are trying to fight off the Raptors. Cutting back to Lois and Mr. Terrific, they go into a tent and they see, oh, he does have a portal to an interdimensional universe. And Mr. Terrific uses the T-spheres, hacks into the portal and opens it for them to be able to go in. They said that he has to send out the T-spheres to go and find them. So while the action is going on, the T-spheres start locating them. Krypto doesn't know what they are, so Krypto like starts destroying like one at a time. At this point now, they're getting so close to the black hole. Metamorpho comes and wraps like tentacle type hands onto Superman. And Superman uses his super breath, and the super breath kind of blows them all the way back out of the river and onto a platform, which I thought was just a little too quick of a resolution when they were setting up all these stakes, and all Superman had to do was just literally blow. And that was just my only critique with that scene there. Then when they're on the platform, Terrific's T-sphere finds them. They follow the T-sphere, and the portal is like closing because it's been open too long. And everybody just cuts straight through the portal and gets into it before it closes, right? And all four of them escape.
Yeah, I mean, I think going to some prior scenes, Metamorpho finally snapping to his senses, restoring Superman's powers, and then them ultimately gearing to bust out together with the help of Krypto, Lois, Mr. Terrific. I will say, like, them doing the conflict within that scene where Metamorpho, Krypto, Superman, and the baby are trying to get out. The guards jumping in and jumping them. Superman fighting with essentially one hand while holding the baby was really well done. And then, Metamorpho using the acid was a good. He's like, it's like the guards are like, what do you like? Stop what you're doing! Like, get out! And he's like, splash.
Superman is still badly injured. We see his veins. He's got the kryptonite poisoning in it now. He being typical Superman character, he's like, oh, there's more prisoners. We need to go back and save them. But Mr. Terrific's like, oh no, you have kryptonite poisoning. It'll take him like maybe a day or two to heal up fully. And so he gives Lois the T ship tells him, like, go take him somewhere safe. And then Mr. Terrific says, I'm going to stay here and try and work on this portal and figure out what's going on. And then, yeah, Metamorpho just takes his kid and just walks off into the forest to just go home. And then that's the end of that scene. Then we go to Luthor Corps again. Lex is pissed when he finds out that Superman is escaping with Metamorpho. He throws the mug onto the floor and he tells them, "Oh, pick it up." And then he's like yelling at the engineer and another worker. And then in the background, like they put the mug back up and he just like knocks it back down again. I thought was very funny and petty. But yeah, he's just really like upset at everyone and everything. In this scene, like Eve is there taking selfies as she does the whole movie. And Lex throws something at her, I think like a pencil or something, and just hits her with it and tells her, "Get out of here. You're so stupid," or something like that. And she runs off and she calls up, Jimmy Olsen. And she's like, "Oh, I'm ready to like send you everything I have to take Lex down." And she says that she will do it in exchange for them hanging out on the weekend. While she's in the closet, Ultraman overhears her and Lex and Ultraman like drag her out. But while they're dragging her out, she's able to send all the information to Jimmy anyway. But when he gets the information, we see it's literally just a file of all selfies. And he's looking at it. He's like, what am I supposed to do with this? This is nothing. At this point now, Lois and Superman and Krypto, they fly down from the T-ship into Kansas. And Lois just gives Superman to his parents. And they take him to his like childhood home, and he's in his bed and he has all the posters and all the like the cool little stuff that like kids have in their room. Jimmy texts her saying, "Call me." They discuss the selfies and she's like, "Oh, these selfies are useless." But then Lois zooms into a lot of them, and in the background she has actually been taking selfies with things to incriminate Lex. So then Lois leaves Clark with his parents there and like jets off to the Daily Planet, and her and Jimmy are trying to brainstorm what they're going to do next. Lex opens up the portal again, the one that's closed by the beach, and the engineer, and I didn't get that other character's name, but he's the one with the glasses that was kind of dealing with majority of Lex's operations. They're like trying to warn him, saying that that's going to cause like a rift. It's going to like, cause a lot of people to die. Lex, he doesn't care. He's like, well, if Superman has escaped, I'm going to open this thing up. It's going to start eating up Metropolis. He'll have to come back to save him, and then we'll kill him there. So yeah, he opens up the portal again while Mr. Terrific's trying to fix it, and it starts creating a crack in reality, and it starts opening up two sides of the Earth, and you see a little bit of the pocket dimension just coming out into our reality, basically.
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of at the point where we're hitting the finale, and we get the full. It's nuts. Luthor tearing open reality in Metropolis to really just bait Superman out was really well done, in my opinion.
We got Clark is on the porch just thinking about everything that's happened, and Pa Kent comes out to him and they're talking, and Clark is telling him the same thing he said to Lois. Pa Kent is saying that he's really proud of him and that his actions and him doing what he's doing is actually what determines the type of person he is, not whatever his parents wanted him to be. And Pa Kent gets him on the right track mentally. And then Ma Kent comes outside, tells him there's something on the TV. We see that Baravia is now going to start trying to invade Joranpur once again. I've written in my notes here that, yeah, this part gave me chills with the score. We see on the TV from many people's POV, we got, the Green Lantern eating his Fruity Pebbles. We got, Hawk Girl seeing this, and everybody's looking at like this war about to start. And then we see the kids of Joranpur, and they are at this point now just trying to make a little flag with the Superman S. And I thought the score was so great here. It's like building up, and then they put the S up. Everybody's like looking at the S, like giving them hope, which I thought was cool on the different POVs. And then it shows Superman, and he's like, I have to get back out there. I have to help them. And just then, Mr. Terrific sends in a T-Sphere saying, I need your help in Metropolis. This rift is opening up and I can't crack the code. I think only Lex has it. So Superman is faced with a little bit of a dilemma here, because he's like, I kind of want to go and help these people in this war, but I also need to go and help make sure that there is an Earth for us to continue to be living on. So he decides to go to Metropolis, and he enlists the Justice Gang to go to help with the war. What did you think with this scene with Pa Kent and everything?
I thought it was a really great, quiet moment, at the Kent farm where Clark is really doubting himself, and Jonathan Kent, Pa Kent, just reminds him that who he is comes down to his choices, not where he came from. I really loved that scene because, it's essentially, who you are, what you do with it, not, your parents dictating that for you. We kind of touched on it early in the beginning, like where, land and kind of who you are influenced by really drives you. I'm gonna tap into the comics here, but if you've ever read Superman Red Sun, things kind of pan out a little bit differently there. I mean, the basic gist of that is instead of Kansas, the ship carrying baby Superman lands in the Ukraine area. Superman is introduced to the world during the 1950s Cold War and is used more as a Soviet asset rather than a superhero in the United States.
It's kind of like the nature versus nurture thing. It all depends on had Superman heard the whole message from his parents, would he have been different? Had he had landed somewhere else, would he have been different? For the next scene, we see Metropolis is all evacuating because this rift is just like cutting through their city, breaking buildings, everything like that. Jimmy and Lois are still at the Daily Planet telling Perry about everything in the selfies. They have like a whole like board of all the selfies printed out and everything, basically showing proof of Lex's wrongdoings. The gang from the Daily Planet get into the T ship and they need to escape because the Daily Planet's about to collapse. They're just trying to like make sure that they write a good story and post it so everybody can actually see what Lex has been up to. Then we go back to Lex's control center that's in Luthor Corp, and we find out that it actually flies. Now a lot of his workers are beginning to kind of question him. You start seeing that he's becoming more and more unhinged. We got people trying to flee on a highway out of the city. There was a cool little Easter egg. There was like an exit to Gotham City, turn left, which was pretty cool. And, Superman comes in right at the last second. A building is falling, about to crash the bridge. He holds the building up while they drive off, and then he like brings it down. He and Mr. Terrific are like talking, and Mr. Terrific says, we need to get to Luthor Corps because I think he has the codes for me to be able to crack, and then I can close the portal from there. And just as they're talking in the air, the engineer and Ultraman just fly in to take them out. They fly into a baseball field, and at this point, because Mr. Terrific's a human, the crash like kind of knocks him out for a bit. And then the engineer and Ultraman are like double teaming Superman. Superman is holding his own, and he's also trying to talk to the engineer and saying, you don't have to do this. There's still time for you. Things of that nature. Ultraman obviously is not having any of it. And then Lex tells the engineer, as planned, now take your nanotech and fill his lungs so he'll die. It starts to go up into Superman's mouth. It starts to take over his lungs. He's not able to breathe, and then it takes over his whole face. So he flies up into the sky. They go after him, and the engineer engulfs his whole body. They're plummeting towards Earth. They kind of just hit the ground. The engineer is knocked out because of this. Superman comes up and the nanotech is just off him, and he just coughs up the stuff that was in his lung. I didn't understand the significance of him going up there to drop down.
Well, I mean, I think my suspicion with the nanites and flying that high and then crashing down, I think my inclination is gravity, because Ultraman can breathe in space. The engineer, I'd imagine, would probably have to come up with some covering, but they come crashing down, and my assumption is gravity and the force. Superman essentially being upside down, everything kind of is going out of his body, and then we later on find out that the crash knocked out the engineer. She's still alive, but just unconscious. And then from here, we finally get to see Ultraman in full. This is the big reveal where we find that Ultraman is a clone of Superman. He's stronger, but way dumber. And then, just imperfections of cloning technology, as we learn by Luthor. And then as this fight continues, we later find that Luthor is essentially feeding him moves that he studied from Superman through these drones. It's really just a one-on-one with Superman and Ultraman. They're fighting all throughout the remains of Metropolis and keeping in mind where the dimensional rift is taking them. And then eventually Luthor leads to a thing with brain over brawn. So then something clicks with Superman, and he's like, hey, let me go ahead and bring in Krypto. Krypto ends up saving the day as Superman whistles him in, and Krypto starts wrecking Luthor's drones like chew toys, so the moves are no longer being fed to Ultraman. And I honestly thought this was easily one of the best moments in the whole movie, as Krypto's bouncing around, just chowing down, because to a dog, he's having fun. And then eventually Superman is able to get the better of Ultraman.
I don't know why he just doesn't have Krypto with him at all times. I mean,
it's not his dog.
True, but I mean, whenever he calls, Krypto's there. I would just, at this point in the movie, Krypto would just be next to me the whole time. Lex said that he found a strand of Superman's hair in one of the battles. The clone Ultraman is kind of a mix between Bizarro and Ultraman, I guess. Ultraman from the comics is from a different Earth, and is just an evil version of Superman in the crime syndicate, which is a whole nother thing.
Yeah, I think with Ultraman, like there were plenty of things combined because the Ultraman names comes from the crime syndicate. The costume was eerily reminiscent of Doomsday's containment suit. In the comics, Doomsday has a suit essentially covering the ugliness of his being. And it's got goggles and everything, but it's green. And Ultraman's is purple. I remember reading that a lot of people were thinking Ultraman was Parasite, who's another Superman villain, and
Right.
essentially is just able to siphon his abilities and just make himself stronger while weakening Superman. So I think Ultraman was essentially a most complete blend between Bizarro and Ultraman, with elements placed sporadically to try and keep the audience guessing.
Within that whole scene, we have a few things that happen. One of Lex's guys like calls up the Bravian president, telling him to go forward and invade. He is telling his troops to go in for the kill, and then we see a couple of soldiers about to shoot some of the kids from the previous scenes that were holding up the Superman flag. From this point, we got Green Lantern and the rest of the Justice Gang arrive just in time before the kid gets shot. Green Lantern like protects him. I thought that this was a really cool scene with like Green Lantern like flipping hands up to flip the tanks. Like Hawk Girl and Metamorpho joins in. It cuts to Hawk Girl chasing through a building where the Baravian president is trying to like run away. She like, takes him and flies him up high, and then he's haunting her saying, "You're like Superman. I know you won't kill me. I know that you're like a good person." And then she looks at him and says, "I'm not like Superman," and just drops him. And yeah, he's like dead. We cut back to Lex and Superman and Ultraman because he's still communicating through Ultraman's little mic that he has in his chest. Lex starts to kind of do the whole villain monologue at this point. He tells Superman that he created the war not for gain or for money. He literally created this war and did everything so that the government would give him the okay to kill Superman. So he says that Superman is destroying humanity and is taking the spotlight off of Lex, who's a human who he thinks is exceptional. Superman even calls out Lex in the scene saying he's jealous. Envy drives him. Lex's whole monologue here is great. After this scene, he like mentions people like Galileo and Einstein and says that even being mentioned in the breath with those idiots, it like makes him feel like throwing up. But he says that at least those people did something rather than just being an alien who just waltzes over here and people start fawning and getting all the attention. This scene was one of my favorites because Nicholas Hoult is holding back tears while he's saying this, so you can feel like his character truly believes what he's saying about his hatred. And then he says that his envy is what drives him to stop Superman. What did you think of that whole monologue sequence?
No, I'm right there with you. It's a much more energetic Lex Luthor performance than we've gotten in the past, Jesse Eisenberg. But no, it was very comic booky, very, very accurate for Lex Luthor.
Yeah, I really enjoy this Lex Luthor. I'm very excited to see what he's got cooking up. I'd love for him to make a Legion of Doom in this universe. I think would be fun. Lex, one last Hail Mary, sends in the Raptors, and I'm like, oh, what are they going to do? They come in, and they're all trying to surround Superman and Krypto basically tag team people. And then the scene from the trailer, Superman spins around and has his heat vision. So easily dispatches of them. Then Ultraman has one last attempt to try and take Superman, kind of puts him in an armbar. Superman, once again, uses his brain over brawn, like you mentioned. And they're very close to the black hole now. And Superman actually dislocates his own shoulder, swings Ultraman around to a piece of debris. I think it might have been a bus or something that's flying towards the black hole. And Ultraman gets hit by the bus and flies into the black hole. They fly over to LexCorp, where Lex says that he's going to take his crew. And he's like, "Oh, fire up the portal. Let's get out of here." As soon as he says that, he sees in the distance Superman is flying in. It's this funny scene. He starts to try and run. Superman just flies in and knocks him over into like a desk or something. And at that point now, Mr. Terrific comes in and just moves everybody out the way. And he's like, "Oh, I'm goddamn Mr. Terrific. I'll just figure out this code," which was a cool line as well. So he's working on trying to close the portal while Superman has his own type of monologue where he's like, "I'm more human than anyone. I get up in the morning every day. I put on my clothes. I try and make the next best decision, and I fail. And I feel fear. I feel all these emotions, and that makes me human. And that's the best part of me. That's my greatest strength." And Lex is like, "You're like an idiot." Before he can finish, Krypto just swoops in, takes Lex by the arm, and is like flailing him around, and ends up like breaking his arm and just like takes him out. Once Mr. Terrific gets the code, he closes everything up, puts a nice bow on the story. Do you have any thoughts on that scene?
Yeah, I mean that overall breakdown is essentially just Luthor finally snapping. He admits he's just jealous of Superman, and like you mentioned, he tries to run, but Superman catches him, shuts him down, and really just calmly tells him, I'm human because of my mistakes. That whole monologue was such a good monologue. And then come to find out, the invasion of Jarhanpur gets stopped. Luthor gets arrested, and then the Justice Gang, come to help, and everyone's trust in Superman is restored.
Lex is now, at this point in the movie, been outed. The Daily Planet leaks to the press. The press start putting their stuff on their TVs about Lex and everything he's done. He's labeled a traitor. Everybody, like at this point, again, Nicholas Hoult is playing it so well. He's holding his arm. He's cut up. He's crying. It's like just a really good acting job from him. The Justice Gang is over there celebrating with Jaranpur. Lex is defeated. He gets arrested and taken to Belle Reve, which has like implications for future projects as well, with Amanda Waller and Rick Flag and all of that. We see that the prisoners from the Pocket Universe are also getting let out. Eve goes and embraces Jimmy in like a funny scene as well. The rest of the people that are in Luthor Corps also are getting arrested and getting escorted out. At this point now, we go to Superman finding Lois, and they say, oh, let's go over here and have like an interview, a private interview. They just start kissing and they float up into the air, and Lois tells him she loves him too. And then the last scene of the movie is where I guess one of the bigger reveals. We go back to the Fortress of Solitude. Superman is talking to, the Robot 4, who at this point now has been fixed up and the place looks a lot better. 4 like tells him, oh, like he wants to have the name Gary and everything in a cute moment. And then none other than Supergirl crashes in through the fortress roof, and she's drunk. She's like, where's my dog? And then Krypto goes over and greets her and is like rough with her, and she's laughing. And then she leaves with Krypto, says, oh, thanks for watching him, bitch. And then, Superman explains to 4 that she goes to other planets with red suns to get drunk because the yellow sun doesn't allow them to get drunk as Kryptonians. And then, her movie is coming out next year. So interested to see where she goes and gets taken off. And in a very cute ending to the movie, Superman is in his chair about to get the rays from the sun. And just like in the beginning, 4 says, should I play the video of your parents? They play home video styles of him with Ma and Pa Kent growing up, which I thought was a very nice touch. It ends with him just smiling, and it cuts to credits, and that's the end of the movie. Any other thoughts on that last whole bit there?
Yeah, I mean the movie ends with him smiling, but the overall ending just left me smiling. Lois and Clark make up. Kara drops in for a little chaos before heading to a party on another planet. Yeah, Clark replaces the Fortress's Kryptonian message with, like you said, home videos of him and the Kents. It's perfect. Like I mentioned at the beginning, the film as a whole is not perfect. Like, yeah, the opening's a little clunky and there's a ton going on, but it's just so fun and heartfelt and over the top in all the right ways. I walked out of the theater with a huge grin, and honestly, that's exactly what I want from a Superman movie.
As we finish up here, I don't have a ton of closing thoughts. The movie was great for me. It has 2 kind of post-credit scenes. The mid-credit is literally just Krypto and Superman on the moon looking at Earth. No dialogue there. And then the actual post-credit scene is just him and Mr. Terrific fixing up Metropolis, and there's like still a crack. And it's just like a little joke gag where Mr. Terrific gets like upset that Superman called it out. I very much enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars out of 5. What about you? What are your closing thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I also gave it 4 stars as well. It's, essentially a new dawn for the Man of Steel.
It made me very excited for different characters. We have a lot of exciting projects. I'm excited to see how he introduces the other greats like Wonder Woman and Batman and the Flash and the Lanterns and everything. So yeah, as you said, it's a new dawn, not just for the Man of Steel, but for DC. And as a DC fan who was rooting so hard in 2013 for us to have our own cinematic universe, I also left the theater hopeful, funnily enough, coming out of a Superman movie. DC is in good hands, so I can't complain about this movie too much. Yeah, I mean, we'll be back next week. In 2 weeks, we'll do Fantastic Four, obviously. But next week, I'm thinking we just do like a poll.
We'll probably do a poll and see like what the people want. Yeah.
That's our Superman podcast. Let us know what you thought of the movie. Thanks again for listening and for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for listening, everybody. Hope you enjoyed.
Bye-bye.